Okay, so are you ready to dive into this?
Definitely. I'm excited to see what we uncover.
All right, well, today we're going to do a deep dive into the Electric State RPG, a game that's, been creating quite a buzz online.
It seems like it's really caught people's attention.
Yeah, and if you are into things like dystopian settings, VR gaming, just unique RPG experiences in general.
This one seems like it's hitting all those
It
marks.
is, it is. And we've got a bunch of articles, some game descriptions, and
It paints a really fascinating picture, yeah.
yeah, so imagine taking a road trip, right, through the American West, like a classic road trip, but it's 1997.
Okay.
But things have gone very wrong.
Not your typical road trip, then.
No, 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 not at all. What's so captivating about the Electric State RPG though is the setting. It's this alternate 1997, right, like we said. But tech has gone kind of haywire. It's left this trail of decay and haunting beauty across the West Coast. So, picture this, okay? Neon lights over these crumbling cities.
Oh, wow.
Nature's reclaiming all these rusted robots.
I'm getting a very distinct visual here.
It's a vibe, right?
Yeah, it's a very specific vibe.
And it's got this like sense of melancholy, just kind of hanging over everything.
I think that's what drawing people in, that sense of mystery and melancholy.
Yeah, and this world, this whole aesthetic, it's inspired by Simon Stollenhag's artwork. Right.
Oh, absolutely. Those incredible paintings that have that kind of eerie, futuristic nostalgia.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's giving me it's like Stranger Things, but if it was also Fallout.
Yeah, I could see that. But with maybe a bit more of an indie, narrative-driven kind of feel.
Yes. Yeah, totally, totally. The articles mention this slow motion apocalypse aspect, which I think is a really unique twist. So it's not, your typical sudden nuclear blast. It's more like this creeping cyber plague that's turning everyone into like, you know, mindless slaves to the technology.
Oh, that's creepy.
Right. Like it's got this like unsettling vibe. So how do you think that affects the story? How does that change how the story actually unfolds in the game?
Well, I think it has to create this constant sense of dread and uncertainty. You're not only just battling, external threats, you're actually fighting against like the slow decay of society itself.
So it's like an internal and external battle.
Exactly. And the game uses the Year Zero engine, which is known for being simple and having an emphasis on collaborative storytelling.
Oh, interesting. So what does that mean for the players then? Instead of like traditional quests and objectives, what are they actually doing in the game?
It's more about journeys and encounters
Yeah.
and the player's choices actually shaping the experience. So imagine it's less about following a predetermined path and more about creating a shared narrative with the other players.
Okay, so you're kind of reacting to these unexpected situations as they unfold.
Exactly. It's about making decisions that have real consequences.
That sounds intense. And character creation seems to play a big role in all of this. You can pick from these archetypes, like the artist or the doctor, each kind of reflecting how people are dealing with surviving and loss. And they even have a hope stat.
A hope stat.
I know, right? It's so interesting. How does that mechanic actually work in the game?
Hope represents like your character's resilience, their ability to hold on to something positive.
So it's not just some arbitrary number then. It has an actual impact on gameplay.
It does. And it directly affects your chances of resisting the cyber plague. The higher your hope, the stronger your defenses are.
Oh, I see. So it's like a mental defense against this creeping tech infection. So it's not just about physical survival, it's mental and emotional survival too.
Exactly. The game really emphasizes that.
So the game happens in a region they call Pacifica. What is that exactly?
Pacifica, well, it's basically what's left of the Western U.S.
Yeah.
After everything that's happened. You've got these lawless rural areas and cities that are struggling to maintain some kind of order. It's a really interesting setting.
It's like the setting itself becomes a character. And speaking of immersive experiences, there's been a lot of talk about this game having VR integration.
Oh, yeah, and that's really exciting. Imagine experiencing the electric state in VR, feeling the wind through these abandoned buildings, the hum of broken robots all around you.
Oh, wow. Would that actually enhance the story, though?
Well, studies have shown that over 70% of game developers believe VR boosts immersion, and players consistently report feeling heightened emotions in those virtual environments.
That's like you're really there.
Exactly. And for a game like The Electric State, which is so focused on atmosphere and emotion, VR could be a game changer. It could really blur the lines between the player and the character.
It sounds like the Electric State is trying to be more than just your typical RPG. And what about the combat? Is it action-packed, or does it match that same narrative focus?
Combat in the electric state is strategic. It's real time, and you have to manage action points, skills, and limited resources, so you can't just go in guns blazing.
So you really have to think on your feet and make tough choices.
Absolutely. And every decision you make in combat can have consequences that ripple throughout the game. It emphasizes that every bullet counts, and every encounter could be your last.
That sounds pretty intense. It seems like they're really going for realism and creating this, like, constant sense of danger.
Yeah, and it's a really refreshing approach to combat in an RPG, especially in a world like this where survival is always at stake. So we talked about the Year Zero engine,
Yeah.
right? And how it really emphasizes that collaborative storytelling aspect.
Yeah, we touched on it a little bit.
But how does it actually play out, like in a game session? What makes it different mechanically from a more traditional RPG system?
That's a great question. Yeah, we talked about narrative freedom, but what mechanics are we talking about here?
One of the key mechanics is this thing called the threat countdown.
Threat countdown.
Yeah, so picture this. You're in this tense situation. Let's say you're trying to, I don't know, negotiate with this hostile faction. Or maybe you're sneaking past those robot patrols we were talking about earlier. The game master sets up this threat clock.
A clock.
Yeah, it's like a visual representation of how much time you've got.
Before things go south.
Exactly.
Okay.
And each time you fail, like a skill check, or you make a decision that escalates the situation,
The clock is ticking.
the clock ticks down.
Okay.
And the closer it gets to zero,
Uh-oh.
the worse the consequences.
So it's less about rolling dice then to, like, pass or fail.
Exactly.
It's more about navigating the tension.
Yeah, it's all about managing that threat as a group.
Yeah.
And you have to work together to prevent a total disaster.
So you have to be really strategic about it.
Yeah, and it makes the experience really unpredictable because even failure can push the story forward in interesting ways.
That's pretty cool. And one thing that I was thinking about was the hope stat in character creation.
Oh, yeah, that's unique.
Yeah, how does that actually translate, like, into playing the game?
It's more than just a number, right? It shows how strong your character is, like mentally and emotionally.
Their ability to keep going when things are rough.
Exactly. And it directly ties into the cyber plague. It's like a mental defense against it.
So if you've got high hope, you're less likely to, be mind controlled by the cyber plague.
Yeah, precisely. And it's not like a fixed thing either. It changes throughout the game based on, your choices and the relationships you build with other
Yeah.
characters, stuff like that.
It's like real life in a way.
Yeah, and it adds this whole other layer of depth to the game because you're not just worried about your character physically,
Mm-hmm.
but mentally, emotionally too.
Right. It's not just about staying alive. It's about, like, staying you.
Exactly. And that really reflects the challenge of surviving in a dystopian world.
Mm-hmm.
It's about your mental resilience just as much as your physical strength.
Now, the source material also mentioned a memory mechanic. I'm really curious about this one.
Oh, that's an interesting one.
Can you elaborate on how that works?
Sure. So as you play, you have these opportunities to create memories for your character.
Like flashbacks.
Kind of, but they have an actual effect on the game.
So it's not just remembering stuff, it's about how those memories actually shape how you play the game.
Yeah, like you might use a happy memory of someone you lost to, give you strength in a dangerous situation.
Okay.
Or you might use a bad memory, like a trauma, to inform your approach to something difficult.
Yep.
It makes the role-playing much more personal because you're weaving your character's past into their present actions.
It adds a layer of, like, depth to the role playing.
Right, and it really personalizes the experience.
It sounds like the electric state is really pushing the boundaries of storytelling in RPGs. We've talked about a lot of stuff, but what about Pacifica itself? What makes it different from, like, other dystopian settings?
Pacifica isn't just your typical wasteland, right? From what I've read, it's this strange, beautiful world where you see nature reclaiming these ruins of this advanced society.
I love that juxtaposition.
Yeah, it's like imagine walking through these deserted cities where these neon signs are flickering.
Over crumbling buildings.
Yeah, or driving across these huge plains with the skeletons of like giant robots.
Yep. Oh, wow. It's a very vivid picture. Does it lean more towards bleak and desolate, or is there, like, a glimmer of hope in all that decay?
It's a bit of both, actually.
Mm.
The art style, which takes a lot from Simon Stolnhag, captures this feeling of melancholy beauty, like a sense of wonder mixed with sadness.
Yeah, I get that.
It's a world that's lost a lot,
Yeah.
but there's still this potential for something new, for rediscovery.
Yeah, like starting over.
Exactly. And it makes it a world that you really want to explore.
So how does the game guide players through this huge world? Is there like a set path, or are you free to just wander?
They give you a suggested starting point, this small town called Salvation. It's this community that's just trying to hold on to what's left of civilization.
Okay.
But ultimately, you're free to go wherever you want. The game encourages you to explore at your own pace, find hidden places, scavenge for things you need, and you meet other survivors along the way.
With a real road trip.
Exactly. Yeah. But with that dystopian twist,
You mentioned meeting other survivors. What can you tell us about the different factions in Pacifica? Are there any that really stand out?
well, it's a world of constantly shifting alliances. It's complicated. You've got the remnants of the old government trying to keep things in order.
Aiming to keep order, yeah.
And then you have these corporations that just want to control everything.
Right. Classic dystopian trope.
And then there are all these smaller factions. Scavengers, cults, rebels, communities that are just trying to survive day to day.
So it's not just a simple good guys versus bad guys kind of thing.
No, not at all. The game avoids those easy moral judgments, and it makes you really think about the choices you make because every faction has their own reasons for doing what they do.
It sounds like there's a lot of potential for role-playing and some real moral dilemmas.
There is. And that fits perfectly with the whole focus on player choice and consequence.
We've touched on VR, but I'd love to hear more about what that experience is actually like for a player.
Imagine putting on the headset and you're instantly in Pacifica. You're not just controlling a character on the screen.
We're in the game.
You are the character.
Hmm.
You can reach out and touch things, feel the grit under your boots, the wind on your face, and the sound design is amazing. You're surrounded by the sounds of this world. Broken machines, crackling electricity, and maybe even the howls of some mutated creature in the distance.
Oh, that's creepy.
It really pulls you in, engages all your senses.
Do the actual mechanics of the game translate well to VR, or is there a compromise somewhere between like being immersed and the actual gameplay?
They've done a really great job with the controls. You can interact with everything in a very natural way, pick up objects, drive vehicles, even fight using, gestures and movements. It feels really fluid.
So it's not clunky.
No, not at all. They've really nailed that balance between immersion and actually being able to play the game.
You mentioned combat. What would a VR combat encounter be like in the Electric State?
So imagine this. You're in a crumbling warehouse facing off against a group of scavengers. You can physically duck behind cover, use your hands to aim your weapon, feel the weight of it as you reload. It's not just about pressing buttons, it's about using your whole body to survive.
You're in the fight.
You are in the fight. And the articles mention that VR combat is much more visceral and demanding. It requires faster reflexes, spatial awareness, being present in the moment.
So the stakes are higher.
Yeah, but the rewards are greater too. Landing a headshot or dodging an attack in VR, it gives you this adrenaline rush you wouldn't get on a regular screen.
So they're really using VR to its full potential, especially for those intense action-packed moments.
They are. But it's not always about the action, right? What about those quieter moments, the more introspective parts of the game? How does VR enhance those?
Yeah, those are important too.
Imagine sitting around a campfire with other survivors.
Yeah.
Just sharing stories and connecting. You can see the firelight reflected in their eyes, hear the crackle of the flames, the wind in the trees. It creates a level of intimacy that's hard to get anywhere else.
It's like you're really bonding with these characters.
Yeah, and it really brings out the emotional core of the game. VR can make you feel those connections much more deeply.
I can see that. Do the sources talk about the technical side of VR? Like, what platforms will it be on? Do you need a supercomputer to run it?
From what I've read, it will be on a range of platforms, both PC and standalone headsets, and they've really focused on making it accessible.
So you don't need a top-of-the-line setup.
No, it seems like they want to make it so everyone can have a good experience without sacrificing the visuals or, how immersive it feels. And they've said they're committed to keeping it running smoothly for all players.
That's good to know. Now, we talked about the beauty and danger of Pacifica, but the articles also mention these things called the Hollow Men.
Oh, yeah, they're terrifying.
And they seem like they're especially scary. Can you tell us a bit more about them and what makes them so frightening?
The Hollow Men are one of the most mysterious and unsettling parts of the Electric State. We don't know a lot about them, but they seem to be the result of the cyber plague going wrong.
Like a worst-case scenario.
Yeah, like twisted versions of what used to be human, but they've lost all sense of self. And they wander Pacifica, driven by this primal hunger, searching for, well, we don't really know what.
That's creepy. What makes them different from other enemies in the game? Is it just how they look, or do they have special abilities?
It sounds like they're not only physically strong, but they also have this weird aura that messes with technology and scares the heck out of anyone who sees them.
Okay, so they're not just mindless monsters.
No, they represent something much darker, like a twisted reflection of humanity consumed by the technology that was supposed to connect us.
So it's not just about surviving their attacks, it's about facing this, like, messed up version of what the cyber plague can do to people.
Exactly. And the game designers have made it clear. The Hollow Men aren't just another enemy type. They're a thematic threat, like a symbol of the game's exploration of what it means to be human in a world where technology has kind of gone off the rails.
So running into them is less about a typical combat encounter and more about a psychological and emotional challenge.
Exactly. It's about confronting your own fears and the deeper implications of what's happening in this world.
Are there any other unique enemies mentioned in the sources that players might encounter?
Besides the Hollow Men, oh yeah, there are a few others. There are animals that have been mutated by the cyber plague, robots that are acting up, and there are even rumors of these cybernetically enhanced humans who are no longer fully human.
So basically, Pacifica is a dangerous but fascinating place, full of creatures that are as much a reflection of the world's brokenness as they are actual threats.
That's a good way to put it. And it seems like the game encourages players to think about how they interact with these creatures.
So it's not always about fighting.
No, there might be opportunities for stealth, diplomacy, or even using the environment to your advantage. You might distract a creature, hack into its systems, or even try to reason with it if it still has some intelligence left.
So there's a lot of room for creative problem solving and strategic thinking.
Definitely. The Electric State RPG seems to reward players who think outside the box, who are adaptable, and who are willing to try different things. It's a game that understands that survival in a dystopian world takes more than just being good at fighting.
It takes brains as well as brawn.
Exactly. You need creativity, ingenuity, and a willingness to embrace the unexpected.
And isn't that a great metaphor for life in general?
It really is. The challenges we face both as individuals and as a society often require us to be creative, to adapt, and to find solutions that go beyond the obvious. The Electric Steed RPG seems to tap into that human capacity for resilience and ingenuity, giving players a way to explore those qualities in a safe, imaginative space.
It sounds like The Electric State is more than just a game. It's a reflection of our own ability to survive and adapt, even when things are really tough. The sources mention what inspired the developers to create this game. What were they hoping to achieve?
They've talked about wanting to make a game that's both entertaining and thought-provoking, a game that makes you think about the role of technology in our lives.
And the consequences of our choices.
Right, and the power of hope, even in the darkest times.
It's a big goal, but it sounds like they've built a world that's perfect for exploration and introspection.
Definitely. And one of the key things that shows that is their focus on player choice and consequence. The game doesn't shy away from difficult moral dilemmas. They're forcing you to make decisions that will have a real impact on the world and the people in it.
So your choices actually matter.
They really do. And the developers have also talked about wanting to create a world that feels both beautiful and unsettling, a world that reflects how complicated our relationship is with technology.
It has the power to help us, but also to destroy us.
Exactly. And I think they're encouraging players to really think critically about this world, to make choices based on their own values, and to consider the long-term effects of their actions.
It's a lot of responsibility for a player.
It is, but it's also incredibly engaging and rewarding.
It sounds like the Electric State is less about passive entertainment and more about actively engaging with this world, grappling with complex themes, and finding your own way through this mix of hope and despair.
That's a great way to put it. It's a powerful experience that goes beyond traditional gaming. It's art, social commentary, and philosophical exploration all rolled into one.
It's a testament to how video games are evolving, how they can handle serious topics and connect with people on a deeper level. If someone asked you, why should I play the Electric State RPG, what would you tell them?
I'd say play it if you're looking for something that will challenge you, move you, and stay with you long after you finish playing. Play it if you're curious about the future, about technology, and about what it means to be human. Play it if you want to be part of a conversation about what it means to be alive in a world that's changing faster than we can imagine.
Well said. It sounds like more than just a game. It's a cultural phenomenon, a reflection of our hopes and fears in a world that's grappling with so much change and uncertainty. It's a story that deserves to be told, a world that's begging to be explored.
And an experience that could change how we think about ourselves and our place in the world.
Before we go completely down the rabbit hole with all of this, let's step back for a second and consider the bigger picture.
Okay.
We've talked about the setting, the mechanics, the themes, but what does the Electric State RPG tell us about the future of gaming? What trends does it represent, and how might it impact the whole industry?
That's a really interesting question. The Electric State RPG seems to be leading the way for a few key trends in game development.
Like what?
Well, first, it shows how important narrative and player choice are becoming. We're moving away from those linear, story-driven games and towards games that let players really shape the story through their decisions, making it a much more personal and engaging experience.
So it's like the difference between watching a movie and reading a choose your own adventure book, but on a much bigger scale.
Exactly. And the Electric State RPG takes that concept and runs with it, giving players a level of control that you rarely see in games.
That's really exciting. What other trends does it show?
Second, it highlights how VR technology is becoming more advanced and easier to use. VR isn't just a gimmick anymore. It's a powerful tool for storytelling and world building. The Electric State RPG proves that VR can create gaming experiences that feel completely real, blurring the lines between what's virtual and what's real in ways we never thought possible just a few years ago.
It sounds like they're pushing VR to its limits, not just with the visuals, but also with how the game plays and how it makes you feel.
They definitely are. And they've managed to make VR an essential part of the game, not just an add-on.
So do you think the Electric State RPG could be a game changer for the whole industry?
I think it has the potential to be incredibly influential.
Hmm.
It's pushing boundaries in so many ways: the story, the gameplay, the technology, and how deep the themes are. It's a game that's both ambitious and accessible, fun to play, and makes you think.
It sounds like they found the perfect balance between appealing to a wide audience and doing something truly unique and innovative.
I think so too.
Hmm.
And if it's successful, it could inspire other developers to try similar things, leading to a whole new ways of games that change how we think about what games can be.
It's a really exciting time to be a gamer, and the Electric State RPG seems to be leading the way, showing us a future where games are more than just entertainment. They're portals to new worlds, ways to learn about ourselves, and platforms for having meaningful conversations about who we are and what we believe in.
I totally agree. The Electric State RPG is a perfect example of what happens when you combine creative vision with cutting-edge technology and a passion for storytelling. It's a game that has the power to not only entertain, but to inspire, to challenge us, and to leave a lasting impact on anyone who experiences its unique blend of dystopian beauty and the strength of the human spirit.
Well said. On that note, let's take a break and come back for our final thoughts on the Electric State RPG and what it all means for you, the listener.
I'm looking forward to wrapping it all up.
Okay, so we've made our way through the ruins of Pacifica, right? We've checked out these cool game mechanics, and we've thought about all these deep themes in the Electric State RPG.
It's been quite a journey.
It really has. But now, let's think about what it all means for you listening right now.
What's the takeaway?
Exactly, why should you even care about this game?
Well, to me, it's not just about surviving in this dystopian world. It's about figuring out what it means to be human when everything's falling apart. It's about those tough choices you make, the connections you build, and the stories you tell.
Even when things are really bad.
Yeah, even then. And it really makes you ask those hard questions about yourself, like, what would you do to survive in a place like Pacifica? Would you compromise your values? What would you hold on to, no matter what?
It's almost like the game is holding up a mirror to our own fears about the future, our hopes for being strong, and those big questions about what it means to be human in a world where technology is everywhere.
And that's what makes it so interesting. It's not just a game, it's something that makes you think and talk about these things.
Yeah, it's deep. We talked about the Hollow Men as that representation of the cyberplague gone wrong. Do you think the game is trying to say something about the dangers of technology, or is it more about how we use it?
I think it's less about saying tech is bad and more about showing that it can be both good and bad. It's a tool. And like any tool, it can be used in different ways.
For good or for evil?
Exactly. The Hollow Men are like a warning sign, reminding us that we need to be careful with how we use technology, making sure it helps us, not the other way around.
So it's like a call for using tech responsibly.
Yeah, thinking about the consequences and making sure it doesn't, take over our lives.
It's about finding that balance between the good stuff tech can do and holding on to what makes us human, like empathy, being kind, connecting with each other, and never losing hope.
Right. And the Electric State RPG gives players a space to explore those ideas in a safe way. You can think about those tough questions and come out of it with a better understanding of yourself and the world.
It's like a learning experience disguised as a game.
Exactly. It's powerful. It goes beyond just playing a game and becomes something more like art, social commentary, even philosophy.
It shows how video games are changing, how they can tackle complex issues and speak to adults on a different level. So if someone asked you, why should I play the Electric State RPG? What would you tell them?
Hmm. I'd say play it if you're looking for an experience that will challenge you, move you, and stick with you even after you're done playing. Play it if you're curious about the future, about technology, and about what it means to be human in a world that's changing so fast. Play it if you want to be part of a bigger conversation about what it means to be alive right now.
That's a great way to put it. The Electric State RPG seems like more than just a game. It's like this reflection of what we're all going through, all these big changes and worries about the future. It's a story that needs to be told, a world that people need to experience.
And it has the potential to change how we think about ourselves and our place in the world.
Well said. The Electric State RPG feels like a game that's pushing boundaries, challenging us to think, and giving us a glimpse of what the future of gaming might hold.
It's definitely something special.
It is. And on that note, we encourage you to check out the Electric State RPG, take your own trip through Pacifica, and see what you discover in this electric world.
Until next time, keep exploring and stay curious.
And keep diving deep.